Hi, Robin. I'm an addict.
Hey, Robynne.
Yeah, thanks everyone for being here today. If there's anybody new to the meetings, welcome. Yeah, I guess I'll just start with my story. I haven't planned anything that I'm going to say today because I've kind of like learned my lesson when it comes to planning shares. I once was given the big book, and it was the first time I was given it I was given literature from another fellowship for another meeting. And it was the first time I'd been given that, and I remember like writing out word for word every single thing I was going to say, and I memorized like 3 sheets of paper word for word, and I was like, I'm a genius, this is going to be fantastic. I'm going to say all these spiritual, profound things, and I memorized them, and I said it out word for word, and it was the worst share of my entire life. Like no one, I don't know. When I get in my head and when I control and when I plan that way, it doesn't work out ever for me. So I'm just like letting go. I'm just gonna speak and let whatever comes out come out. And at the end of the day, I believe that everything happens the way it's supposed to. And the reason I say that is because I have my grandmother is in this program as well, and one time she told me I was stressing about a share that I hadn't gone my way, making it about me, and she said, Robin, it doesn't matter if you messed up, because the way that the universe works is that everything you say in a meeting is meant to be heard by someone sitting there. And that stuck with me because I was like, wow, it really helps me. When I think of it that way, it helps me to get out of me, because then it's like, even if I do mess up, for some reason, someone needs to hear something, you know. I was born in South Africa here, and I was born into like a really loving family. I have 2 brothers and 1 sister, and we always got along growing up. Like my parents had like the usual like disagreements, but never divorce. Like everything was pretty peaceful and happy growing up. And what I remember about my childhood is just always feeling very different. Like I just felt kind of like an alien, and I wasn't good at communicating with people. I didn't really know how to make friends. And so I kind of like would just disappear into my head a lot, or like disappear into books, or separate myself from others. And I was in denial about that for a really long time, but a few years ago, my sister told me a story. Like I remember when I look back into my childhood, I kind of look back through my alcoholic lenses of like, everything was okay all the time, I was great. But, and I'm like, I remember sitting with like a book club, like doing book club with all my friends. But my sister told me a few years ago that she had actually organized that book club for me because I didn't have any friends. Like I didn't know how to communicate with people, and she felt bad for me, so she organized this club. And that was kind of the story of my life, was like I didn't know how to be a person. I felt like I hadn't been given the blueprints to life that everyone else had been given. And so I think because of that, I kind of got dishonest from a really young age. Like I remember like stealing from preschool at a young age, and always like, and my mom would like find toys in my bag, and I would always have some story about why they were there. That was a complete lie. And that's, looking back, like that's an odd thing for a child to do, you know, or that was an odd thing for me to do because my siblings didn't do that. And I didn't have my first mind-altering substance until I was 15. I grew up pretty religious, so I was like very scared of doing anything bad, that I considered bad. And the first substance I had was alcohol. And I don't like remember exactly how it felt, but I remember after having my first drink, looking at the person next to me and saying like, I've found the cure. I have found the cure for what I am. And then I remember like making a joke like, haha, all I have to do is this all the time now, and then I'll be fine for the rest of my life. And I had no idea how true that would like come to be. So after that, I kind of, I panicked because I was like, I did a bad thing, I can't do that again. And then for a few years, I didn't drink again, but my disease started manifesting in my behavior. Like I was always a really reckless kid, and I was self-harming, and I was getting into trouble. I started stealing with my friends. I just was like this black sheep in a family of happy, progressive, like well-functioning people. There was just like them, and then there was like little Robin with all of her issues. And so my mom sent me to a psychiatrist. Actually, the first psychiatrist that I went to, I had developed I was in so much fear all the time that I kind of had like gone back into myself, almost in like a psychosis type thing. And I went to a psychiatrist and she put me on medication. She told me that I had anxiety. And the medication worked for a little bit. It kind of like suppressed everything down. The feeling of being out of my body went away. And then I just went along with my life. And I thought everything was fine, but really things were getting more and more chaotic. My fear did come back. It just came back in a different form. I started having panic attacks. And my mom found out about the stealing and about a few other things in my life, so she sent me back to a psychiatrist who put me on more medication and told me that I was bipolar, and that this medication was going to help me, and they gave me therapy. I had therapy once a week for a few years, and it was always the same story. Like it would work for a little bit, kind of, and then things would just go crazy again, go haywire, and I would fall off the rails. And looking back, I guess I was never really honest with my psychiatrists about my drinking and my using, because I was in so much denial myself at that point that I couldn't admit to myself that I was using and drinking too much, so I could never admit it to another person. Like I honestly just thought it was a part of who I was, you know, and that it was fine for me to do. And so, yeah, things got a little bit more chaotic in my life. Honestly, it's like really fuzzy looking back. Like I'm trying to remember details of stories that I can tell you, but I guess it's not really about that, because we all know, you know, the war stories. We've all been there. We've all woken up not knowing where we are. I think the one thing that sticks out for me from those days is just like the loneliness, like feeling so utterly alone. Like no other person on earth could understand what this is, what this feeling is. You know, like waking up after a bender, being cold and shaky and having bruises and not knowing where I was and where my stuff is, and having messages on my phone from loved ones just being like, how could you do this again? Like, what have you done? And I kind of just thought I was a bad person. Like, I was like, I don't want to hurt people. I don't want to be doing these things. And yet, when I'm given the choice to pick up, I always do. And I know deep down that I'm going to do these things again when I pick up. So I must be a bad person. I must just be making this choice because I don't care about the people I love. And that was a very dark place to be. I grew up religious, and so I had some form of a connection to a higher power when I was a kid. But I let that go when I was in active addiction. I remember like going out onto this pier one night. I was destroying my life. I was doing everything wrong. I was gravitating towards darkness and chaos and pushing my higher power away. And then I remember walking out into this pier one night in the middle of the night, drunk and high, after just doing some crappy things, and being like, God, if you're here, show yourself to me. If you're really here, give me a sign. And now I look back at that moment and I'm like, the arrogance of me, like, destroying my life, hurting, doing all these things, and to push my higher power away, and then demanding that my higher power show up when I want it to and give me a sign. It's just insane. Like, I think that I was cutting myself off from like the sunlight of the Spirit in that moment, and there was no way for my higher power to get through to me there in that space. And so no sign happened, nothing happened, and I was like, okay, there's no God, I'm alone, we're here only to feel as good as we can for as long as we can, and then we die. And so then I walked through the rest of the next few years like thinking that nothing mattered, and there were no rules for life, and I could do whatever I wanted, and it was such a dark place to be. Like I just chased everything outside of myself that I thought would make me feel good, and I just got emptier and hollower, and I just became this like empty husk of a person. And I guess my step one moment for me, like when I conceded defeat, there was nothing huge that happened. It was like another bender. There was no one thing that like changed everything for me. But for some reason, I think my higher power just like reached out to me and gave me a chance and gave me this moment of clarity. So I was at a party and it was just a terrible night. I had like wrecked things for my friends. I was embarrassing the people that I love, and I thought that the owner of the party was like stealing my drugs. So I like set up traps around her house, and this was a party that I was invited to as a guest on. My friend had like gotten me invited, and it was terrible. And my friend had to like gather a group of people, his friends, in another room, and they had like a little side meeting about me at this party to try and like keep me away from anything dangerous. And I was just so in self, I couldn't see the chaos that I was causing, and the fact that I was making it all about me, and that I was causing other people that didn't even know me to have to clean up after me and look after me. And so after that night, I just kind of had this moment of clarity, and I realized what I was doing, and I saw the cycle of like, have a bender, destroy my relationships, humiliate people, humiliate myself, hurt myself, hurt others, and then wake up cold, shaking, alone, be like, I'm never gonna do that again. A few weeks go by, I start to feel better. I think, okay, well maybe I was just really sad that day. Maybe I didn't have enough to eat that day. Maybe I was just mixing the wrong stuff together. Let me try one more time. So in this moment of clarity, on the drive home from that party, I saw the pattern, and I was like, oh my God, I need help. So I called my parents, and I was like, my mom was getting ready to go to church, and in my selfishness, I was like, okay, stop, everyone stop for me. Mom, don't go to church, I'm coming home, I have something to tell you. And she immediately just knew, like she picked, when I said, Mom, can you stay home from church? I just have something to tell you. She knew. She was like, oh, okay, Robynne, let's do this. And so I sat across the table from them, and I just said, I need help. And I remember repeating this sentence over and over again because it didn't make sense to me logically. I was like, I can't stop. I don't know what this is, but I cannot stop. And that doesn't make sense because like physically I can control my body, I can control my hands. I can put down this phone. So like, why can't I put down a drink? Why can't I put down a drug? It didn't make any sense to me. But I knew in that moment, like, there's something else that is making decisions for me right now, and I have no power over it and no control, and there's nothing I can do except for ask for help. So I looked for a few rehabs online, and I ended up finding one here. I couldn't afford any of the ones in Canada, and I honestly was doing a bit of a geographical, like I just wanted to get out of the country as far away from my messes and from myself as I possibly could. But thank God I ran to the right place because I ended up in a treatment facility that taught me the 12 steps and just broke me open in a way that I never thought would be possible for someone like me. Just check how much time I got. I remember coming into treatment and wanting help and having the gift of desperation, but then as soon as people actually started trying to help me, I kind of like my walls came back up. I once read in literature, fear is the chief activator of all my defects, and that is so true for me. When I'm in fear, all of my other defects can come out, and I think when I went into that facility, my disease knew that I was in a place that I was going to get better and started fighting harder than it had ever fought before, and I threw out all the cards I had to play. I was manipulative, I was dishonest, I tried to drag other people down with me. I played the whole broken wing bird act. I tried to survive like the way that I had survived my whole life. And what I eventually ended up realizing is that those tools that I had used to survive, my defects of character, were not serving me anymore. And it was time for me to live instead of just survive. So, I'm trying to think of there are a few specific moments in treatment that stand out for me, that opened me up to this program. They're like little mini spiritual awakenings. I think the first one, I was sitting in a group where my peers were calling me out on my behavior because what I was doing was not okay, and people could see it, and that's something that I didn't know either. Like, I thought I was so suave and I had it all figured out and I was like gonna play everyone. But people could really see what I was doing. And thank God, because I got called out on my behavior, and I remember sitting in this group and arguing with the counselors and just like finding loopholes and trying to point to everything else that everyone else was doing wrong, because I thought that if I point at you, then you won't have to see how broken I am, and you won't have to see how unlovable I am, and that I'm a mess. So I'm like hiding and fighting with the counselors, and one of them just stops and looks at me, and there's silence. And she looks me dead in the eyes, and I'm like sitting here being like, don't cry, don't cry, don't cry. Don't let them see your weakness. And then she's like, in my arrogance. And then she's like, Robynne, we're trying to help you. And then I snapped. Something snapped in me and I started crying my eyes out because I knew, as angry as I was, I needed help. And I wasn't okay. And it was actually such a relief to cry. And it was such a relief to let people see my weakness and my vulnerability and like realize I don't have to hide. It took a few more of those moments before I actually started coming around though. Another one was, I was in another same group and doing the same behaviors. And a counselor said to me, who forced you to come here? And I was like, no one, I chose to come here. And then he said, okay, because you're not acting like someone who wants this. And I was like, oh crap. And that baffled me. I was like, what does he mean I'm not acting like someone who wants this? And then it clicked for me, like the reason that these people are telling me not to be manipulative, not to be dishonest, to behave like a normal human being, to be honest, to be of service, all these things, is because I'm not just a messed up person that has all these issues with also a drinking and using problem. It's all part of my disease. Like the problem is me. And that was huge for me. Another thing is like the masks that I wore. Like I just wore makeup, like heavy, thick makeup all the time. And I couldn't let anyone see me. Like I would literally go to bed with like fake eyelashes glued to my face. I couldn't even look at myself. And I remember they suggested that I take my makeup off, and I was so terrified. Like I cried my eyes out, and then I went upstairs and I took it all off. And when I came back down, everyone was like eating lunch in the cafeteria, and I walked to the door, and I took a deep breath outside. Like this was going to be some huge moment for me. Like I thought that I was going to walk into that room and everyone was going to turn around and be like, you know what I mean? Like, oh my God. Like I thought I was a monster and that everything was about me. And then I took a deep breath and I walked into the room and like no one even turned around. No one cared. And I was like, oh my God, everything is not about me. It's okay to just be. And that was a huge moment for me as well. Like there was just all these like little incremental things that happened where I was like taking down masks bit by bit, letting down my walls, letting myself be seen. And there are times when people actually did have to put up boundaries with me because I was being so defective. Like I had got to a point in treatment where I had isolated myself to the point where like I remember sitting and eating lunch by myself in the cafeteria. Everyone else was, not in the cafeteria, the dining hall. Everyone else was eating with each other, like at tables, helping each other, and I was like sitting in the corner by myself, and I felt like a leper. And today I'm actually grateful for that because I see that people had to protect themselves from me, and I have closure around the fact that I needed to kind of be broken in a way. Like I needed to choose recovery regardless of what anyone thought of me, because by that point I was like, okay, I've done it again. I've created chaos. I've burned my life to the ground here in this place. No one is gonna love me. I've done it again, and I should just give up. But I still stayed. I didn't leave. I decided when I was in that place of isolation that I had taken myself to, I decided I'm gonna do one thing differently here, and that is not run. I'm gonna stop running. So even though I thought that nothing was gonna be okay again and that no one was gonna wanna be my friend and that I was completely alone, I stayed. And what I found was that people didn't hate me, you know what I mean? People put up boundaries with me, but they loved me. They were just waiting for me to change my behavior and to treat them in the way that they deserved, with respect and love. And when I did kind of start following suggestions, I was welcomed back into that love, and people saw me. I think that is the most beautiful thing that I have ever experienced, is like being seen and still loved for all of my defects, all of my everything. That's what this program is to me. It's love. And by the end of treatment, I was flying. Like I felt so good. Like I felt things I have never felt before. Like or not in a very, very long time. Like real connection, real friendship, and joy that I had not felt since I was a little kid, like bubbling joy. And that was all just from blindly following suggestion. Like no matter what it was, no matter how bizarre it sounded, I did what I was told, and I was given this life. And yeah, so I left treatment after 4 months. It was suggested that I go to the halfway house, which was the most incredible experience of my life, and I think the bonds that I formed in that house are some of the deepest bonds I've ever created, and will never let go of. And then after my time in the halfway house, I moved back to Canada, and I tried to implement the things that I learned in treatment. I think the biggest thing for me was honesty. Like when I shredded all of my dishonesties in treatment, it just gave me this lightness that I hadn't ever felt before, and I didn't want to lose that. So when I got to Canada, I was scared, to be honest, but just to live my life in an honest way. But I did, and my higher power had my back. I remember getting there, and then for the first 2 weeks, I didn't have a job, and I didn't have anything to do, and I was like, oh my God, this is like what I was feeling so antsy. I was like, I need to do something. And I got really self-piteous, and I was like, God, if you brought me to this place, and like, why aren't you giving me a job? Why aren't you giving me this? Why aren't you giving me this? And then I realized, looking back at my journey, like everything happened in such perfect timing. And I was like, well, there must be a reason for me to be here now. If there's all this space in my life, it must be for a reason. I'm supposed to be doing something here. And so what I did was I just decided to throw myself into the program. A friend on the way here was telling me how she finds her higher power when she's in service to others. And I love that, because that's how I found my higher power in those 2 weeks, which is like giving everything I had to the program, like 2 to 3 meetings a day, coffees, giving my number out, really getting connected to the fellowship. And I think those were like my happiest 2 weeks, because the more I do this program, the happier I am. Like that's what it's about for me today. It's not even about like I do this program because I don't want to pick up. I don't want to pick up, but I do this because it makes me happy. This program helps me to be a person that I want to be. And that is just the most incredible gift. Sorry, I'm getting so sidetracked. The job. So I had an interview, and I was so excited for it. It was like a naturopathic clinic, so it was like a clinic that helps people that don't want to be on medication. They want to look at the natural route, and I was like, that's perfect for me, because a lot of my trouble going into treatment was that I was on so much medication, and I really, really believed that it was helping me. And when I came off of it, it was such an incredible thing for me, so I wanted to give that to other people, and I was like, I really want this job. But of course, there was a huge gap in my resume, because I'd been in treatment for like a year. So I get to the interview, and they were incredible people, and I told them, we had the interview, and then at one point they asked me, like, what's this huge gap in your resume? And I paused, and I was like, I could lie and get the job, or I could be honest and keep this feeling of lightness, and I could keep being this new person that I want to be. And so I chose to be honest, and I told them I've been in rehab for the past year, and they both just looked at me, and they're like, okay, thank you. And then I left, and then the next day they called me back, and they were like, we would love for you to be on the team. And after a few months of working there, my boss told me it's because of that moment, because I was honest with them. That's what they wanted on their team. And so that's why they chose me. And I remember I actually, like, when I had to hire someone for my job, I looked at the job ad they put up for me, and there were like 54 other people that had applied for that position. So it's crazy that my higher power gifted that to me. And I think that's just the gift of recovery, Even if I hadn't gotten that job, my higher power would have taken care of me in some way. So I worked that job for a while, and it was managing the clinic. And I realized that I didn't want to be doing admin stuff forever. I really wanted to help someone, because that's a gift that I found in this program. And being of service really like fills me up in a way that I haven't experienced before. So I asked my boss, on my sponsor's suggestion, I asked my boss if there were any opportunities for growth in the company. And he was like, yeah, here, you can do this nutrition program. It'll be great. You'll become a nutritionist. You'll get a huge raise. You'll get all this stuff. And I was like, okay, great. So I started the school, and it was really amazing, but I wasn't that passionate about it. although like using the tools of this program, I was able to get myself to a place where I was enjoying it and doing really well. And then the school emailed me one night and they were like, we're bankrupt and you can't do this anymore. And you also can't get your money back. And I was like, oh, great. I was terrified because like my whole future plan had just been like thrashed. And I was like, okay, well, I was scared, but there was like this little hint of excitement in my heart. And I was like, I know that my higher power has something for me. I know that something's happening here, because that's always been my experience since coming to recovery, is that when a door closes, there's always a better one coming. There's always something else that's in the works. So I spoke to my sponsor about it, and I kind of like looked at my life, and I was like, what do I really want to do? Like, what am I actually passionate about? And it was 12-step work. Like, I'm the happiest when I'm sitting across the table from another addict telling them that it's going to be okay. And so I started looking into school for that, and I found a school, and I needed 6,000 hours of experience working in a treatment facility. So I spoke to my sponsor about it, and I was like, what should I do? And she was like, well, like, don't get your hopes up, but like, just ask if you're interested in like learning the Cedars way, like or the way that you learned in treatment. Why don't you just ask if they're looking for volunteers? And so I did, and they were, and I asked if I could come in August 2022 so that I could have time to like save up money, because Robynne's way. And through a bit of a miscommunication, actually, I ended up like coming much, much earlier, and I was really scared because I didn't have all the money that I needed, and I was like, God, how is this going to work? How's this going to happen? But it was weird because like every time I needed money for something, my higher power would like send me the exact right amount just for that thing, so that I would never have so much that I was like really like living in luxury, but I would have just enough for that thing. And it's like, that's how I've seen my higher power work in my life. Like, he always just gives me exactly what I need for that next step. And yeah, so I sold my car and I quit my job, and I moved back here, and now I'm volunteering at the place that saved my life, and it blows my mind every single day. Like, I just can't believe the way that my higher power has worked in my life. And I was kind of stressing at the beginning of this meeting, thinking like, what am I gonna say? I need to say something spiritual and profound, which is not true, because it's not about that. But I was saying this prayer in my mind, the one that goes, take my trials away from me, that victory over them would bear witness to those I would help of thy power, or something along the lines of that. And I realized like the most important thing I can say today is like, the reason I'm sitting here is because of my higher power. That is the most, if you didn't hear anything else today, hear that I am here today because my higher power gave me a second chance at life. And it's not anything that I did. Like, I look back at my journey and I'm like, why did because I've had friends that didn't get this, you know? I've had friends that have disappeared, and I've had friends that have passed away, and they seem smarter and stronger than me, and better. And I look back at my journey and I'm like, why did I end up making the little decisions that got me here? And I think one of the first decisions was to stay 3 months in treatment. And there were little synchronicities that came from my higher power. Like, I wanted to stay for 28 days, and then my higher power worked things around in my life in a way that I got a letter from my mom saying that my license had been taken away and I was on probation for 3 months. So I was like, well, if I go home now, I can't drive for 3 months anyway. And then there was also like, I had like met someone just before treatment that I wanted to like start a relationship with, that I don't even remember the name of today. But that person, just before I came into treatment, that person was like, oh, by the way, I'm going on a business trip for 3 months, but in 3 months when I get back, let's like meet up. So there were all these little like pointers to like 3 months happening all at the same time. And I was like, okay, I guess I'll just stay for 3 months. And so it's really like nothing that I've done. It's not like I chose this because I'm just good. You know, it's like my higher power has given me little chances here and there, and I've listened to those little signs, and it's my higher power that has kept me here today. So if you're, I don't really know if there's anyone new, but I look around at this room honestly, and I just see so much love, and like so many people that have contributed to my journey, and I'm so grateful for that. If there is anyone new, welcome, and I really hope you give this a shot. I'll leave it there.
Thanks, Robynne.